Mileva Maric sat across from Einstein while ideas were being built. And history just remembered the one name. And I completely object. She is the first citizen in my women's restitution project of history. I'm not going to rewrite her story with any accuracy. I'm giving her a ridiculous, feminist, alternative ending that she completely deserves. I'm going to just start in the middle. Albert says, you know, I'm going to win that prize. It's my intellectual work. My name's on everything. Mileva says, but we worked on this together. We stayed up till 3 a.m. discussing these ideas. We solved these problems together. I supported you while you worked. He said, you can't have your name on anything. You're foreign and you're a woman. No one's going to take us seriously if your name's shared on the paper. Then Albert's like, you know what, we're married. Everything I do, it's for us. And then he totally leaves her. He marries his cousin. And she's left with these 2 kids, not very much money. And this experience of watching the world become fascinating with a man she stayed up till 3 a.m. with for years, her intellectual partner. And in my restitution version, Mileva, she's devastated. Of course she is. She lost love, money, status, this invitation to the intellectual world, which suited her. And survival, it's expensive. But one day, Mileva, she wakes up and thinks, wait a minute, I'm a mathematician. I'm a woman of considerable power. Why am I standing around waiting for history to decide if I'm intelligent? I'm brilliant. And then quietly, she starts publishing papers. She uses a man's name because apparently you need a fake penis in those days. And then she creates a system that's entirely her own genius. Not relativity, not a thing of Einstein's work, hers. She starts to get fascinated with human energy and economics. Why do some communities flourish and other ones fail? What happens when education, health, transportation, useful work are not treated as expenses, but ways of increasing the productive energy of an entire population? So she starts making mathematical models. She starts applying them. A Serbian industrialist gentleman starts applying it. He doesn't know who wrote it. And then employment starts to rise in this little community. Women couldn't work because they were caring for children. This cooperative opens, then another and another, and people say, hey, who's this dude? Mileva keeps writing. Governments start using them. Factories reorganize. Schools are funded differently. A young mathematician receives scholarships, and Mileva begins making money. Not like this abandoned wife money, but she makes an absurd amount of money. Her children go to excellent schools. And this is my universe, and I'm in charge of this fantasy story. She acquires something she completely needs. She gets a Serbian castle. Windows, books everywhere, a lab. She's got one of those giant dining tables full of candles with one chair. She's got her own room. Her male pseudonym becomes famous. Albert learns about the work. He doesn't know who wrote it. And then there's this giant international banquet. Mileva attends quietly, and Albert sees her, and he assumes she's there because of him. And she's like, Mileva, why are you here, trying to follow me? And she's like, I'm just having dinner, yo. His new wife, she looks spectacular. And then somebody taps on the microphone. They're going to announce the great reward for the evening. This enormous international prize for the economist who had developed all these wonderful ideas in Serbia. Albert's leaning forward. He really loves this work. It's brilliant. We're going to announce the award for a participant who had to use a pseudonym because her own name couldn't be recognized. This is Mileva Maric. And everybody goes, ah, the crowd goes wild. Albert is stunned. He's got a shocked face. And Mileva stands. She walks past him, walks past the beautiful wife, and she stands on the stage and she gives the lecture of her life. She doesn't even mention Albert. Not once. She talks about economics. She talks about math. She talks about human potential. She talks about Serbia, and she talks about what happens when a young woman across the table, she talks, and then Albert, he's sitting there listening, and maybe he remembers that moment of that young woman who sat across from him in the kitchen table and helped him with his ideas, expanded his own consciousness as she was able to receive the intelligence that he was holding inside. She argued with him, she corrected him, he corrected her, and maybe he finally understands something. But that doesn't really matter. It's really her scene. And then the committee, they bring out the prize. And you know what? It's going to be one of those giant Ed McMahon checks. It's so big, it's appalling. Mileva is horrified. She's so embarrassed. Her face turns red. 2 men carry it out. And she's trying to remain respected as an international economist. And there's this giant check. Everybody's taking pictures. And then she gets the award. Mileva Maric wins an international prize. And then she goes home. Not to Albert, not to prove anything. She just goes home. She goes back to her book. She goes back to her work, to her own ideas, to her Serbian castle. Because Albert was just one chapter in her life. She gets her work. Mileva gets her name, and she keeps the gold. What part of yourself have you been waiting for someone else to recognize before you actually can claim it on your own?